Well, as I said, Brad Rossacci, Director of Innovation for 900 Pounds of Creative. We are an innovation lab and design studio. Most of our work is going to be in the emerging technology space. So we work with Fortune 500 companies and leaders in industries to really bring that layer of innovation and really reimagining what that means for organizations using things like virtual reality, augmented reality, IoT, those types of systems, and really using it as very practical tools for their organization's environments. Me personally, I like to always explain why I get out of bed every day. It's really all about the human experience. It's about helping to evolve and drive that forward in a way that's impactful and also very tactical in its approach. And so as we look at this thing we call the human experience, what do we see? We see work, life, and play. Within that sandbox, within that framework, we really start to unpack that and understand, here's what's going on. Total chaos all the time, right? We kind of live in this very distracting environment where we end up with devices always calling for our attention. We have, think about like life in Times Square. That's the way I like to think about how we are as a society right now. And there's a lot of distraction a lot of times that really gets in the way of what the intent is. The intent is to help evolve the human experience. But what happens is we distract ourselves with what we like to call solution design. Solution design forgets the most critical factor of design, all of us, the human being. And so what we work very hard to do is blend science, technology, and design to drive that process forward, really unpack the human experience in a way that makes sense and makes it very intuitive and also really exciting. So one of the things I always love to call out in the very early days of our research and our investigation, which I'll get into a little bit more as we unpack it further, is, if you don't know Friedrich Nietzsche, perspectivism, amazing theoretical framework. What it looks at is taking a variety of disciplines, a variety of minds, those that you would never imagine could come up with an effective solution that really have all the answers. And it's really getting them together in a way that helps drive that process forward very effectively. So if we unpack that, what we start to see is, one of my favorite examples is the Fold It model. So with Fold It, there were a group of scientists. If you know that example, awesome. If you don't, I'm about to explain it to you. So a group of scientists for 15 years tried to solve a cancerous protein strand. Were unable to do so successfully. They gamified it. So they dropped it into a web platform, put it online, and opened it up to gamers worldwide. In 12 days, a group of gamers discovered what the problem was and fixed the cancerous protein strand, which led to solutions around cancer research. Absolutely incredible. What do gamers know about cancer? They don't know anything about cancer, but they know a lot about gaming. And so that's really what perspectivism is all about. It's about seeing something in a new way and reimagining the potential of what it can be. And so I like to think we're all designers in our own way. We all have a creative side, a creative aspect to who we are, and being able to engage that and excite ourselves with that is a very effective strategy to help drive that process and that conversation forward. However, I think what happens oftentimes is we get a little afraid because disruption can be terrifying. The brain naturally hates disruption because it's unfamiliar to us. If we go way, way back to primitive time periods, the reason for that is because we had to have a few things to survive. We had to have trust. We had to be able to rely on those around us. We had to have sources of food to survive, right? We were hunters, we were gatherers. We've all heard these terms, but that hasn't left us. Just because we're now in much more modern societies, we are still the same primitive beings in so many ways. And our brain thinks in a pattern format. And so if you interrupt the pattern of how my brain functions, and on top of that, you start to understand that if it's unfamiliar, I'm probably not going to love it, then that creates a problem within the ecosystem instead of helping to drive that forward. So that's where distraction and disruption become very different from one another. So if we can disrupt in a way that's impactful, then all those fears just start to quickly subside and they begin to go away. So that's that philosophical layer and that lens that has to come into the design process, understanding that whenever you're going into your customers, your own internal environments, whoever your stakeholders might be, try to give them base hits. Try to let them take off or bite off a little bit at a time, as opposed to just running in and doing what I like to say, Mars shot innovation right off the bat. You hear moonshot, we've already been to the moon, so I'm all about Mars shots because that's where we're headed. So let's not go backwards, let's go forward. And I'm a total space nerd, so there's also that aspect too. However, if you really think about it, though, it really is about that practical, tactical approach, and that reduces fear so quickly. I was actually talking with a gentleman a little while ago, and what we were discussing was, if you're coming in to your organization and saying, I'm going to bring VR to my company, cool. What are you going to do with that? Are you just bringing VR in just to bring VR in? No, I hope not. I really hope you're not just doing it to be cool, because that's only going to last about this long. And then we're going to realize there was no purpose or value to that, and that one opportunity that you had to bring a new emerging technology to bear in your organization is gone, because you didn't do it effectively in a way that actually made sense, and practically and tactically, and all of those great buzzwords that we like to hear. So as we start to investigate what an effective strategy could be, here's one of my favorite kind of funny examples.
People are born to live their lives. I'm born to dance. Want me to work like a dog in a full-time job? Haha, I'm born to dance. Don't wear no coat, no tie, no shirt, and even no pants. I'm born to dance. You shaking your head? Well, I'll be shaking my ass, cause I'm born to dance. I wanna shake it and shake it and shake it, shake it and shake it, girl. Do you wanna shake it? I wanna shake it and shake it and shake it, shake it and shake it, yo. Watch me dance now.
So, and I'll kind of talk over this a little bit, but great example of, and this is not something we did, this is just a case study I really like. Great example of looking at a real problem and finding an effective solution that was kind of that base hit, but still disruptive type of mentality. I doubt they just walked in and were like, hey, we're going to make a dancing traffic light because that would be cool. Hopefully they had some data to kind of back that up and say, hey, people are having a difficult time with actually stopping at traffic lights. It's causing incidents. There's creating risk. So how do we start to do something and reimagine how we could solve for that in an effective way? Well, let's make a massive, activation where we have people dance on the traffic light, right? So that interrupts brain pattern. That disrupts our brain, and it literally causes our brain to pause for a moment. It's in that moment when our brain pauses that we have an opportunity to captivate that audience and do something that can truly be effective for them and make a lot of sense. So just love that example from that perspective. And examples like this are exactly why we felt it very important to really start to unpack how the brain functions and bring neuroscience into the design framework coupled with technology. In doing that, we start to get very intuitive, effective processes that help to create experiences like what you just saw in that example, and you'll see in a few examples in just a moment. Before we do that, though, let's go to Mars for a few minutes. Let's look at our insane methodology called human innovation science and these 3 different tiers of the ecosystem that have really helped us to drive the industry forward over the past 3 years. So the first layer is called performance anthropology. Basically, it looks at human behavior and how an environment functions. So you can think organizational behavior, methodologies, and practices as well, coupled with design thinking, if you're familiar with design thinking, or the predecessor, user-centered design, and then also behavioral gamification. So I want to spend about 4 or 5 minutes and just really walk through why these are important for us and kind of what each of these mean. So design thinking, really amazing process. We have found it to be incredibly successful in helping our customers really be effective in how we unpack a problem. That's the first thing we're going to do. We do what's called empathy work, which is basically we go into their environment and we work with them to really understand from that customer or user's perspective what is happening. Now, we have funky names for it because we're creatives and we like to have fun, so we say empathy in action. And then becoming Sherlock Holmes is basically the investigative process. Okay, now that we kind of have that perspective, that perspectivism, right? Now let's start to really look at this next layer and investigate that process alongside them so that they can start to understand what's happening. And you can use this in your organizations or with your customers, both internally as well as externally. And this is a very proven methodology. So if you aren't overly familiar with it, please take a look at it, Google it. It's awesome. From there, we go into what we call perspective ideation. So we do kind of like interactive brainstorming sessions with them. We get together, we do crazy stuff. We have Post-it notes everywhere. You know, we have awesome music playing. We like to hit all the senses. So we incorporate taste with really great culinary experiences and just really make this wonderful kind of environment for them. And typically, we're talking about executives, right? And sometimes that can go very nicely when they first walk in. But my favorites are the ones that come in like, what is this guy doing? And by the end, like, they're the most engaged one in the entire room because they're so stinking excited about what's going on. And they realize, wow, this is actually practical and it makes sense for my bottom line and what my business is doing. And that's what design thinking really does. It unpacks a problem at such a level of depth, and all that chaotic ambiguity that they walked in the door with, they walk out with a wonderful navigational map to help drive them forward in a very practical way. And then you go into prototyping. Okay, so we call it paper prototyping. Instead of spending tons of money on what we used to call prototyping, right, which meant very, very expensive, now we do much more of what's called paper prototyping. Literally, we get like construction paper and we draw out the ideas, and then they take that back to their stakeholders and they ask them, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Oh, I like this aspect. This doesn't make any sense. And you get feedback, and then you bring it back, and we test that way. So now we're being very iterative, like designers love to be, because we're creative and nothing's ever finished, and we're very, just right-brained and ridiculous. And so that's how we work, that's how we function, and that's what makes us kind of have that linear and lateral perspective on how we solve for this. So very, very cool and exciting methodology and process. And again, being that time is of the essence, I'm going to keep on going. But if you have questions afterwards, ask me. Gamification is one of the other very core functions of how we do what we do. Very early on, gamification basically just meant stimulus, action, reward. If you've ever used your Starbucks app on your phone, you have experienced gamification. What gamification is evolving to is a very effective strategic tool for helping to evolve behaviors within an organization. It does three things really nicely, very organically. In design, there's a few ways to go about it. You can either create your stimulus, which is your environment, or you can already just have it and you just use it to your advantage. Action, though, is a very, very key function to behavioral gamification. We can literally evolve action by understanding what the stimulus is and creating the variable reward that helps to achieve our objective simply by understanding what is the action currently, what do we want the action to be, and how do we get them from here's the current action to where we want that behavior to be. And you can unpack that in any way that you could possibly imagine. Think about it from an innovation perspective. You'll see in a minute, one of the core behaviors of innovation is empathy. Well, I can measure empathy. Storytelling. I can measure storytelling. So if I can start to measure these actions, then I can unpack that at a deeper level and really understand what's happening to try to drive that behavior forward. The brain loves variable reward, specifically endorphins. So if we can excite endorphins, oh my gosh, that's the runner's high, right? That is one of the most addictive chemicals in the body coupled with dopamine. So now we're hitting goals, now we're hitting reward, now we're hitting action, and we're starting to vary how the brain functions, and we start to engage at a much deeper and at a broader level as well. So that collectively made up performance anthropology. So that's the first step. Let's understand your environment and really know what's going on. Now we get to roll up our sleeves and have a lot of fun. We go into what's called neurodesign. At the highest level, we won't go into too much detail today, neuroscience and design have become really good friends and have allowed us to make that design process a whole lot simpler for the end user. We personally focus on neurotransmitters in the brain. So we look at endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. And we've been very fortunate to find some really creative ways to personify those behaviors and make them design requirements. So with serotonin and oxytocin, they love groups. They love that opportunity to connect to other people, to other ideas, to other things. Endorphins and dopamine are going to be much more about variability and goals and rewards they can focus on. And then there's a number of other functions, but very high level, neurotransmitters are awesome in the neurodesign framework process and really help to make design significantly more intuitive than what it could be before. From there, we asked a simple question. How has innovation happened throughout history? What did that look and feel like? And this is kind of what we found. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes on. However, over about a 60-year study, not that we did it for 60 years, but we reviewed 60 years of history within innovation, And we found that all of these behaviors are consistent within each of the different sequences that we investigated, everywhere from world wars and things like skunk works that work to try to get us through those struggles and those challenges, using innovation to drive that, all the way to present day with what groups like GE are doing and reimagining how they evolve and adapt and grow. Again, some of my favorite ones are empathy and friction. Friction is really important for innovation. Sometimes chaos is the best way to get from, oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind, to, wow, we can actually have a eureka moment and something great's going to happen. However, in order to get through that chaotic ambiguity, I highly encourage you to create that sandbox and have kind of a process for how innovation works for you. For us, it's human innovation science, as well as organizations that we work with. For others, though, it can be something that you home grow just in your own organization that makes sense for you. But make sure you have a way to really bring that framework together so you have that innovation as a process. And so from there, we kind of said, kind of like gamification, you need a bit of a formula. So you need 3 things for innovation to happen. You need an opportunity or a challenge, and it needs to produce an outcome. Sounds very simple, but when you couple it with this, it tends to work very nicely for the customer. So we're back on Earth. We went to Mars. We're all the way back. Hopefully you enjoyed that little trip. We're going to now just show a few case studies and kind of let you see, like, okay, what does this really mean? One of our favorite and most recent ones is what we did with reimagining the patient experience. We just did this at Texas Children's. This example was done with Cook's Children's up in Dallas, but we're really trying to help the medical community really start to think about how can VR be an effective tool. So this really is fun because it takes gaming and just a really cool gaming system, and we use it and repurposed it for the patient experience to get those children out of context.
My name is Steve Dietz, CEO, founder of 900 Pounds of Creative.
That's a lot of videos on my end, sorry.
Giving back to the community is such a big part of our DNA at 900 Pounds. We found the opportunity to bring virtual reality to Cook Children's, and it made such a big difference for these children that deal with so many different illnesses. Just putting a smile on their face, taking them far outside of context, far outside those hospital walls. It was amazing to see all the positive reactions. The children got such a big kick out of virtual reality. They get to be a soccer goalie in first person. Many of them had never even experienced it before. Their parents were standing around. There were smiles and laughs everywhere. The unique aspect about the virtual reality soccer blocker is that basically the entire environment is white labeled, customizable to any organization's branding, colors, or logos. Everything in the experience was built from scratch. From the 3D model environment to the user interface graphics, visual content, our development team and production teams really pushed hard to create the best experience that it could be. Thank you to Cook Children's for giving us the opportunity to bring the joy of virtual reality here to the hospital.
So there's 2 really cool things going on right now in virtual reality within the patient environment. One is pain tolerance. So they have found over a number of years now, I mean, I think the first study I read personally, and y'all may have seen this one, it was probably 2010, 2012, and it was for burn victims, and using kind of a snowball throwing VR game that basically they found reduced pain levels because while they were going through treatment, the brain was experiencing something very cold and chilling. So it helped kind of balance that. Where we've been more focusing in recent time is more around just what is that patient experience like. And a lot of hospital systems already do cool like tablet-based games and Xboxes and things of that sort. However, that doesn't really get them out of context, right? And so while it's an awesome step in the right direction and using those tools in a very inexpensive, practical way, because a lot of times these programs don't have a ton of funding, so they have to be really careful about how they go through this. And so what we've worked with them on is, one, let's transport them. Let's get them out of the entire environment, even to St. Jude's, which is one of the coolest hospital systems we'll ever see, right? Even then, they still see the same environment every single day. And so getting them into gameplay or something that's just exciting and kind of outside of context is a really cool way to trick the brain, honestly. We like to say influence, but it's really manipulating and tricking the brain and getting them to a place that they just haven't ever been before. Also, it is a really cool thing from a kind of like power perspective, right? Because you are that powerful goalie. You are the one that's winning. And in those types of environments, a lot of times you don't feel that way because you're going through treatments and you're having surgery and they're probing on your body, and it's just not the most fun time in your life. So to give you an opportunity to have that sense of like, yes, I won, and everybody wins. Like it's how many saves you have, right? That's how we designed it. My cousin actually did it the other day, and she was like, wait, I only got 4 right, but you're saying I won? I was, oh, you always win. You got 4 saves. You got 4 correct. It's also in how you kind of create that language, right? In a way that shows them how awesome they really are. And so it's both from a neuroscience perspective, it helps to get the brain out of context and help to reimagine kind of like who I am for a little while at least. From a emotional perspective, it helps to drive you beyond just that sense of kind of struggle and helps you have an opportunity just to do something fun and get away for a little bit. And there's more on there that talks through more of it. And if you have any more questions afterwards, let me know. But one of the next ones up that I really enjoy, IoT. Some say Internet of Things. I think that's like probably the worst name ever given to this concept. But conceptually, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, when we think of the Internet, we think of www. With the web page. Even the gentleman who came up with this term has said in a book that I read recently, it wasn't really my goal to make this the name of it. It was more so just like I was trying to understand what I was creating, and that was just the first thing that popped in my mind, and it stuck, and I didn't really mean for that to happen or not happen. I've heard the intelligence of things recently. I thought that was really good. I've heard the Internet of Everything. Thought that one wasn't too bad. So I've kind of gone with the intelligence of everything. I've kind of combined a couple people's thoughts, and I'm like, I kind of like where that's going. So I'm still ideating on what this thing should actually be called. But I think, honestly, at the end of the day, it's kind of like mixed reality. We're taking the physical environment, we're taking digital layers, and we're trying to bring it all together so that life's a little more autonomous and intuitive. This is one of the ways that we have visualized this in our organization. And actually, just for time's sake, similar example, but I'm going to go to another experience just because I really want to get through this one to show you one of the cool things that we've done recently. So connected car, very cool with Nokia. Same exact premise, but a little bit more intuitive example.
Breakthroughs in smart technology are greatly affecting today's business traveler throughout their journey. From the rental car counter to pumping gas, the Internet of Things provides us with a diverse range of possibilities that make our trip easier. The challenge is that none of these are connected in an all-in-one app. Nokia and Hertz are working to seamlessly combine all of these interactions in a simple and intuitive way using Bluetooth. 900 Pounds was engaged to bring all of these technologies together through a modular-built graphical user interface with animations that work together flowing seamlessly. Our team created first-of-its-kind programming and development with a diverse range of APIs. Integrating an API from WCities, which utilize GPS location to find food and events based on user preferences, and combining it with Continental's Remote Cloud Key API, which allows users to connect to a car remotely, was just the beginning. SAP's API focused on getting fuel, parking, and keeping track of expenses. This collective vision was brought to life at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, Spain. 900 Pounds is helping Nokia and Hertz be on the forefront of making business travel easier in the future through the seamless combination of smart technologies.
So I love this example because it really does show kind of everywhere from how we use design thinking, how we try to bridge the gap with neurodesign, and then from there, how we produce something that really is a practical solution for our customers. And what I mean by that is, if you look at it from the design thinking lens and perspective, you're really working with travelers to understand, like, what do you want whenever you're on the road? What's important to you? And who doesn't love trying to find a gas station whenever they're in a rent car, right? It's like the one time you need one, and you can't ever seem to find one. Maybe I'm the only one that's ever happened to, but every time I've ever been there, I'm like, oh my gosh, where's the gas station? I have to return the car and get on the plane. So that's one thing we incorporated is we're going to show you where the nearest gas station is to our location so that you're not driving 30 minutes out of the way and then having to drive 30 minutes back when you were 2 minutes away in the first place, right? It sounds silly, but it's a very helpful tool whenever they're on the road and traveling. The ability to kind of have some of the comforts that you might have in your own vehicle. So you can lock, you can unlock your car, regardless of the brand. You can start the engine, you can stop the engine. A lot of stuff that is becoming much more common in vehicles on a daily basis, but typically aren't going to be available to you when you go and get a loaner because they're not going to have those features readily available to the customer. So those types of systems were the ones that we felt to be really important to incorporate because those were the ones that from the user feedback said, we need these things, we want these things, these would be nice to have. And someone's calling me. I will turn that off real fast. Yeah, and then as we kind of evolved it from there, putting it all inside of a mobile app made a lot of sense. We are by no means an app company. However, applications can be really effective houses, if you will, to make them very robust and exciting. It's kind of like what some people have done with Microsoft Excel over the years. They've made it do things that it was never really designed to do. In a lot of ways, we'll do similar things with applications to try to really reimagine what those are. So I'm going to stop because I would love to give some time for any questions, and we're almost out of time. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask away. Yes, sir.